Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you some stories about trolls. And to get in the mood, I've dimmed the lights a bit and I've lit a little WoodWick candle so that we get the sounds of a crackling fireplace. I think that will make the stories a tiny bit better. Make it feel like we're sitting around in a dark room lit by the fire, the wood crackling, and telling some spooky stories about Norwegian trolls. This book is called The Troll with No Heart in His Body and Other Tales of Trolls from Norway, and it is retold by Lisa Lunge Larsen with woodcut illustrations by Betsy Bowen. So let's open this up and I'll show you what we're going to read tonight. The Troll with No Heart in His Body. So we'll start off with this note from the author to explain a little bit about Norwegian trolls. Then I'm going to read you some stories. I've read through them and decided which ones to read to you tonight. We have to do the Three Billy Goats Gruff, because I think, in my opinion, that's the best known Norwegian troll story in America. Then I'm going to read to you The Boy Who Became a Lion, a Falcon, and an Ant, and Butterball. And then we're going to finish it out with The Troll with No Heart in His Body, since it's the title of our anthology. So let's dive right in. A note from the author. Trolls. When I was a child growing up in Norway, just the mention of that word sent chills down my spine. Trolls were everywhere, in the mountains, in the forests, certainly under bridges, and even in our house. One of my favorite memories is of my father, pillows stuffed under his shirt to enlarge his towering 6'3" frame, storming into our bedroom at night, roaring, "I smell the smell of human flesh." Trolls were even in the words we used. When I was bad, my mother called me an trollunge, a troll child. And of course, trolls were in the stories I adored and always begged for. Now, having been a storyteller for more than 20 years, I find American children also begging for a storyteller, also begging for just one more troll story. What are trolls and why do children love them so much? Trolls are giants shaped by the ancient Norse mythology and by the towering Scandinavian landscape. Long before there were people, there were trolls. According to Norse mythology, the first thing in the world was a huge wild frost giant named Ymir. From his feet sprouted the race of the trolls. The first troll had 6 heads and 6 arms and quickly grew to a monstrous size. Ever since, Norway has been inhabited by these giants. Clearly, one aspect of children's fascination with trolls is that they make the very landscape come alive. Not only are trolls of the landscape, they also return to and shape the landscape around them when they die. One of my most vivid childhood memories is of walking in the woods with my mother when I was about 3. We ambled along the trail in the dark old-growth forest filled with filtered sunlight, when my mother suddenly grabbed my arm and whispered, "Look, there's a troll." I actually thought my last moment had come until I saw where she pointed to a dead troll that had turned into an overturned tree root. Together we examined the troll, found his nose, arms, and even his eye sockets. It was a magical moment, and to this day I point out all the dead trolls in the landscape to my children and their friends. A huge rock pile is a troll that burst. A tree root lying on its side is an ancient troll. An oddly shaped rock may be part of a nose. Last summer, my 8-year-old son, swimming in Lake Superior, spotted an unusually round white rock. He dove for it and proudly emerged with a troll's eyeball. But perhaps the greatest reason children love troll stories is because children need stories like them. Nothing can truly show children, even adults, more about how to live, about who they are, and about their place in the world and the struggles of life than a good folktale, and these troll stories I count among the best. Yet today many children have never heard any of these great folktales, including troll stories. As a society, we have come to think of folktales as amusing entertainment, quaint relics of the past. We certainly do not view them as vehicles for understanding. Yet folktales explore issues as complex as the nature of good and evil, and the triumph of kindness and patience over bullying and anger. Folktales reveal universal truths. Take the story Butterball, a perennial favorite in my storytelling sessions. In this story, a troll hag carrying her head under her armpit captures a silly butter-loving boy because he ignores his mother's advice. The troll hag orders her daughter to cook stew out of Butterball. When she fetches her husband, the troll, in the end, the seemingly silly boy outwits the daughter and gets rid of the entire troll pack. This story is the most frequently requested story in my repertoire. I had always thought its principal attraction was the hideous troll herself, who carried her head under her armpit, until one day a child blurted out, "How come Butterball is so stupid when he is at home with his mom, but when he's on his own he manages just fine?" After years of telling the story, the compelling element immediately spotted by a child had completely escaped me. Your family, your community can help, but ultimately you have what you need to succeed inside yourself. Strength comes from within. Because they speak to our inner circumstances, great folktales speak to all children regardless of age, race, gender, and outer circumstances. Recently I told troll stories to a group of children, ages 3 through 13. Despite the disparity in ages, the children sat equally spellbound as story after story unfolded. I was reminded of what a psychologist had told me about children's fascination with trolls and with folk tales in general. He believes these stories bypass later brain development and go directly to the ancient part of the brain where they reside right next to fire. What a lovely image and how appropriate. The way children sit around a fire, the way they are warmed by it, is exactly the way they sit when listening to a good story. Like fire, a good story is slightly dangerous, spellbinding, and warming. Fire, anthropologists tell us, is one of the elements that separates humans from animals. Basically, 4 main practices make us human: using fire, creating and using complex tools, including writing, tilling the soil, and engaging in ritual and ceremony, including storytelling. This means the love of story is part of what makes us human. It is innate, and it helps us to survive. We need fire, and we need to hunt, to gather, to fashion clothes, and to till the soil for our physical survival. While ritual and storytelling now may seem unnecessary for the survival of the body, they are necessary for the survival of the soul. Think of the lives of so many children today. Do they get much of what helps their soul and humanity survive? Do they sit around campfires, have candlelit dinners? Can they garden? Do they learn to draw, to whittle, to knit, to weave, to sew, to fashion things of clay? Do they hear great stories? Many children receive so little of what nourishes their soul that it seems as though they turn from a positive expression of their humanity to a destructive one. They grasp fire, but it becomes arson. They want to use tools, but the tools become guns. They want to till the soil, but their world is paved over, so they ransack and destroy. And there is less and less ritual or structure in their family life, so they seek the ritual and structure of gangs. Such children are clearly grasping for their humanity, but it seems we do not know how to help them find it. Telling or reading folk tales is one way to cultivate a child's soul and humanity. With their ancient symbolic images, such stories reach deep inside children to connect with them with their essential nature. Troll stories do this better than many folk tales, because the troll acts as such a clear foil to the hero or heroine. Everything about the troll is contradictory to human nature. They are enormous, grotesque creatures with superhuman strength. They are full of treachery and falseness and stand for all that is base and evil. To fight trolls, you can't be like them or use their weapons. Thus, battling trolls brings out the very best in those who dare confront them. Intelligence and ingenuity, courage and persistence, kindness and pluck, and the ability of men and women to rely on what each has to offer. To do battle with a troll is to learn to draw on the best of our humanity. Children's feelings are never misplaced in troll stories, and they soon learn to trust them. Here, right and wrong are kept steadily in sight. In a world where children are confused by a myriad of opposing and shifting values, these stories serve as a rudder. They teach eternal truths about how to live that will never become irrelevant. I think we should light a candle, or better yet, it, light the fire, gather the children, and enjoy the spell of the trolls. Here we see a map of Norway and all the trolls. The Norwegian landscape is alive with trolls. Not only are trolls of the landscape, they return and shape the landscape around them when they die. The stories. Many people think trolls are like gnomes, tiny, chubby people wearing red pointed caps. Others think trolls are little plastic toys with pink or orange hair. Norwegian trolls, which are the first trolls, aren't like that at all. They're giants. They can be so big that their heads loom above the tallest treetops. In fact, they are so big that they have to live inside mountains or under really tall bridges. Trolls are ugly to look at. Their eyes can be the size of pot lids, and their noses as long as rake handles. Not only that, trolls love to eat children or little animals. Fortunately, the brain inside that huge head is tiny. Even a little goat can figure out how to outsmart a troll. Let's read The Three Billy Goats Gruff. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, way up in the mountains of Norway, there lived 3 goats, and the names of all 3 were the Billy Goats Gruff. Now these goats needed to go up into the mountains in the summertime because that's where the grass was greenest. But in order to get there, they had to cross an enormous bridge, and underneath that bridge lived a huge, hideous troll. His eyes were as big as pewter plates, and his nose as long as a poker. But there was no way around it. Across the bridge they had to go. The first one to cross the bridge was the teeniest, tiniest of the 3 billy goats. When he walked across the bridge, it made a little sound like this. Trip, trap, trip, trap. "Who's that stepping on my bridge?" roared the troll. "Oh, it's only me. I'm the teeniest, tiniest of the 3 billy goats Gruff, and I'm on my way up into the mountains to get fat," whispered the little goat in his little goat voice. "Well, I'm coming to gobble you up now," roared the troll. "Oh, please don't eat me up. If you wait a little longer, my brother will come, and he is much bigger and fatter than I am." "Oh, all right then," huffed the troll, and the little goat ran away as fast as he could. The next one to cross the bridge was the second of the 3 billy goats, and when he walked across the bridge, it made a sound like this. Trip, trap, trip, trap. "Who's that stepping across my bridge?" shouted the troll. "It's me, the second of the 3 billy goats Gruff, and I'm on my way to the mountains to get fat," stammered the goat in a shaking voice. "Well, I'm coming to gobble you up now," bellowed the troll. "Oh, please don't eat me up. Why don't you wait a little while till my brother comes? He's much bigger and fatter and tastier, too." "All right, then," roared the troll, and the little goat ran across the bridge as fast as his little legs could go. Now the next one to walk across the bridge was the biggest of the 3 billy goats. His fur was shimmering and shining, and on his head were 2 gigantic horns. He was so heavy that when he walked across the bridge, it sounded like thunder. Trip, trap, trip, trap. "Who's that stepping on my bridge?" roared the troll, for now he was really hungry. "It's me. I'm the biggest of the 3 billy goats Gruff, and I'm on my way to the mountains to get fat," boomed the goat in his deep voice. "Well, I'm coming to gobble you up now." "Why don't you come along?" the goat taunted. "I've got 2 spears. With those I'll poke out your eyeballs and your ears. I've got hooves as strong as stones. With those I'll break your body and your bones." And he went at the troll and broke every bone in his body and poked his eyes out and sent him way down into the river. Then he went with his brothers up into the mountains, where they ate and got so big and so fat that if the fat hadn't fallen off them yet, why, they're still there. Snip, snoot, snoota, her eventyr uta. Her eventyr tuta. There we go. Let me try again. Snip, snup, snoota, her eventyr uta. Snip, snap, snout, the tails told out. I really like this story. All trolls are ugly, but the ugliest of all are the trolls with 3, 6, or 9 heads. They get terrible headaches, probably from the different heads arguing with each other. And the only thing that can soothe them is being gently rubbed by the hands of a princess. That's why trolls often steal princesses and keep them captive inside their mountain homes. To figure out how to get rescued from a troll, you have to know their greatest weakness. Trolls, you see, think they're very smart, and they love to brag about how clever they are. The prince and princess in this story know that if they can make the trolls boast, they may give away important clues. They also know that if the sun shines directly on a troll, he will burst and turn to stone. The boy who became a lion, a falcon, and an ant. Once upon a time, there was a man who had an only son. They were so poor that when the man died, all he left his son was a sword, a small sack, and some dry bread crusts. As nothing remained for him at home, the boy took his few belongings and set out into the world to seek his fortune. His way lay across a mountain, and when he had climbed high enough to get a view of his surroundings, he spotted a lion, a falcon, and an ant quarreling over a dead horse. The boy was frightened at the sight of the lion and wanted to hide. The lion saw him, however, and called for him to come and settle their quarrel. The boy went over and took a good look. Then he pulled out a sword and divided the horse as best he could. To the lion he gave the large joints, saying, "The lion should have the most, for he is the biggest and strongest." Then he gave the liver and the tasty tidbits to the falcon. The falcon should have the tastiest bits, for he is such a dainty eater. Last he gave the head to the ant, for he likes creeping in nooks and crannies, he said. The 3 animals were so pleased with the clever way the boy had divided the horse that they wanted to reward him. But the boy just smiled. "If I have helped you, that is reward enough for me." Still the animals insisted. "If there is nothing else you want, perhaps you would like 3 wishes," the lion finally said. The boy liked the idea, but he could not think of what to wish for. "Would you like to be able to turn into a lion?" asked the lion. "And a falcon?" said the falcon. "And an ant?" added the ant. The boy thought this might be useful, so he made the wishes. Immediately he threw away his sword and sack and turned himself into a falcon. He bristled his new wings, tested them on the wind a few times, and took off. He flew over mountains and valleys and forests. As he flew over a large lake, his wings became so sore he could hardly fly on. At last he spotted a huge rocky crag in the lake and landed there. It was an odd-looking rock, jagged and rough, and with a large outcropping on one side. Being curious, he changed himself into an ant and spent some time exploring it. After he had rested, he became a falcon again and flew all the way to the king's farm. There he landed on a branch outside the princess's window. When she saw the bird, she thought it was so beautiful that she wanted to keep it. She coaxed it to her, and as soon as the bird was in her room, she slammed the window shut and locked it in a cage. But the boy was not worried. When night came, he just turned himself into an ant and crawled out of the cage. Then he became a boy again and went and sat down by the sleeping princess. She awoke and screamed with fright, but the boy calmed her. "Why would you scream so? I'm not going to hurt you." "I thought you were the troll I had been promised to." "How in the world did you get promised to a troll?" asked the boy. "2 other trolls have already stolen my sister," said the princess, "and now a horrible monster with 9 heads wants me for his bride, or he will destroy my father's kingdom. Every Thursday the troll sends his messenger, a dragon with 9 heads. My father has managed to hold him off by feeding him pigs, 1 for each head. Now there are almost no pigs in the entire kingdom, and I am scared to walk outside." When the boy heard this, he was determined to battle the dragon. The very next morning he went to the king and told him. The king was well pleased, and as it happened to be Thursday, the boy immediately set out for the field where the dragon came to receive his pigs. Soon enough, a giant serpentine shape with enormous webbed wings lashed the air. Its 9 heads spouted fiery flames as it swooped down. When there was no sight of its meal, it roared and spat. then lifted its enormous body and charged at the boy as if it was going to swallow him alive. In a twinkling, the boy became a lion, reared up on its hind legs, and leaped at the dragon, sinking his teeth deep into the scaly body. The lion tore off one head after another, till at last only the 9th head was left. But that was the strongest head. In its mouth were 9 forked tongues, and it spouted blazing venom as it lashed its mighty tail and attacked. But the lion was ready. He jumped nimbly aside, leaped upon the back of the dragon, and bit off the last head. Now the boy went to the king with the good news, and the king and the princess were overjoyed. The king wanted to reward the boy, but he just smiled and said, "If I have helped you, that is more than enough reward for me." The king insisted there must be something he wanted. Finally, the princess leaned over and whispered in her father's ear. With a smile, the king turned, saying, "My daughter says if there is nothing else you want, perhaps you would like her for your bride." The boy thought this was an excellent idea, and so it was settled that he was to marry the princess. Everyone was happy. Indeed, the boy and the princess were so happy that they forgot about the troll and went walking in the garden to plan their wedding. Suddenly, the horrible troll with 9 heads came upon them, seized the princess, and flew off with her through the air. The boy ran to tell the king, then changed into a falcon and sped off. By now, the princess and the troll were out of sight, but the falcon flew in the direction he had seen them go. Soon he came back to the large lake, where he remembered the mysterious rock he had seen during his first flight. He swooped down, changed into an ant, and crept through the crack in the rock. He's turned into an ant. He crawled farther and farther down until he came to a locked door, but knowing what to do, he just crept through the keyhole. On the other side of the door was a large hall. There he saw a princess rubbing the heads of a troll who had 3 heads. This must be the right way, the boy said to himself, for he realized this was one of the king's older daughters. He crawled on, and after a while he came to a second locked door. Again he crept through the keyhole. This time he came to a room where another princess sat rubbing the heads of a troll who had 6 heads. Now he knew he was on the right path and hurried on. Finally, he came to a third locked door. On the other side sat the youngest princess with the troll who had 9 heads. He scurried over the floor, crept up her leg, and pinched her. She knew it had to be the boy wanting to speak to her and asked the big troll permission to go outside. There the boy appeared in his own shape. "How are we ever going to get you away from here?" he said. "I don't know," said the princess, "but I will ask the troll some questions. Perhaps he will tell us something useful." The boy turned back into an ant and settled on her foot. The princess returned to the troll, and after a while she began to sigh and appear lost in thought. "What is all this moaning about?" roared the troll. "You are forgetting to rub on my head. The pain is coming back." "Oh, it's just that I am so sad, thinking that perhaps I shall never see my father again," said the princess. "That's right, you never will," gloated the troll. "You are mine now." "Is there really no way to see my dear father and my dear country again?" "There's only one way, but no one will ever discover it," said the troll. "It is a secret." The princess took the troll's biggest head in her lap and began to rub it. "Perhaps you will tell me. There is no harm in that, surely." The troll thought about this. No harm, he said, "for it is impossible to guess and even more impossible to do, even if you knew the secret." The princess rubbed the head even more. Finally, the troll could keep his clever secret no longer. "To free you, someone must find the grain of sand hidden under the 9th tongue of the 9th head of the dragon and drop that grain down the crack in the rock above us. Then and only then would you be free, but nobody will ever guess it," he said, thinking himself very clever indeed. Well, as soon as the boy heard this, he crept down from the princess's foot, out through all the keyholes, and up through the crack in the rock. There he became a falcon and flew to where the dragon lay. He found the 9th head and carefully lifted each tongue. At last he found the tiny grain of sand under the 9th tongue, picked it up with his beak, and flew off. When he came above the rock, he took careful aim and dropped the grain of sand so it fell cleanly through the crack. Suddenly the rock cracked asunder. The sun shone straight on the three trolls sitting there. With a tremendous explosion, the trolls burst and turned to stone. Then the lake dried and turned into lush and beautiful fields and meadows, and a gold castle rose up. The three princesses came running out of the castle, and they all returned to the old king's dwelling, where there was no end to their rejoicing. The boy and the youngest princess were made husband and wife, and there were revels throughout the kingdom for 7 whole weeks to celebrate the wedding. Then the boy and the princess went to live in their gold castle and fared well to the end of their days. Snip, snap, snoota, here eventira doota. Snip, snap, snot, the tale is told out. Let's read about Butterball. The next story is one of my favorites because it has a female troll called a troll hag, and she doesn't carry her head on top of her shoulders. Instead, she carries it underneath her arm. Imagine how scary it would be to hear her deep rumbling voice coming from her armpit. Troll hags are a little different from trolls. They're usually smaller, they can be out in the sun without bursting, and they're quite a bit smarter than the trolls. You have to really use your brain to outwit a troll hag, as this story shows you. This is Butterball. Once upon a time there was a little boy who lived with his father and mother way up in the mountains of Norway. This boy loved to eat sweet, buttery things. Every day when his mother was baking, he sat next to her, chatting and eating bits of dough or cookies, and for this reason he'd become as round as a ball, so they called him Butterball. One day the mother was baking and Butterball was eating just as usual when suddenly their dog, Goldtooth, barked loudly. "Butterball, go out and see why Goldtooth is barking so," said the mother. Butterball ran outside. A hideous sight met his eyes. Down from the mountains strode a large troll hag. She carried her head under her left arm, and sticks and root tips protruded from her neck where her head should have been. In her right hand she clutched a large burlap sack. Mom, Butterball wailed. "There's a troll hag coming down the mountain. What shall we do?" "Quick! Go and hide underneath my baking table. Stay quiet and let me handle everything," said Butterball's mother calmly. "Okay," said Butterball, and crept underneath the table. Soon the door shook from loud knocks. "Come in," called Butterball's mother sweetly. The troll hag stooped and squeezed through the doorway. "Good day. Is Butterball at home today?" rumbled the troll hag from beneath her armpit. "Oh, I'm so sorry," said Butterball's mother. "He's out hunting grouse with his father today. It's too bad you missed him." "Yes, that's too bad," agreed the troll hag, her wicked little eyes darting around the room, "because I have this beautiful little silver knife that I so wanted to give him." "Pip, pip, here I am," said Butterball, and shot out from beneath the table. "Oh, Butterball, there you are. My back is so sore. Why don't you crawl into the sack and collect the knife yourself?" Butterball didn't need to be asked twice. He dove into the sack, but no sooner was he inside than the troll hag grabbed the sack, flung it over her shoulder, and rushed out the door. She had walked for a long time when she finally grew tired and dropped the sack on the road. "I'm going to take a little nap. Why don't you take one too, and then we'll be on our way," said the troll hag. Soon Butterball heard hacking noises in the forest. The ground shook from the troll hag's snores. Quickly he found the silver knife, sliced a hole in the sack, and escaped. In the forest he found a root about the same size that he was, which he rolled into the sack so it looked as though he was still there. Then he ran home as fast as he could. The troll hag was fuming with anger when she came home, opened her sack, and discovered the root. So the next day exactly the same thing happened. Butterball and his mother were baking when Goldtooth started barking. Again Butterball ran outside, and again he came right in. "Oh, Mom, that hag is coming back, and she's uglier than ever. What shall we do?" "You know perfectly well what we are going to do. Get under the table, stay still, and don't make a peep, and everything will be all right," replied his mother. Butterball did as his mother told him, and soon there was a loud knock on the door. Good day. Is Butterball at home today? Rasped the troll hag's voice from beneath her armpit. I'm sorry, but Butterball's out hunting grouse with his father today, said the mother. That's too bad, said the hag in her husky voice. I have this beautiful little silver fork that I so wanted to give him. Pip, pip, here I am, said Butterball, and again he came scooting out from under the table. Butterball, my back is still bad. Why don't you crawl into the sack yourself? He did, and as soon as he was inside, the troll hag grabbed the sack, flung it over her shoulder, and rushed off. Once again, the troll hag grew tired and stopped for a nap. As soon as Butterball heard the snores, he grabbed the fork and began to make a hole. It was a little more difficult, but he finally made a small hole. He tore a bigger opening with his fingers and crawled out. This time he found a big round rock to put in the sack in place of himself. When the troll hag came home, she broke her best pot when she dropped the rock into it. Now she was almost trembling with anger. The third day was just like the others. Goldtooth started to bark, and Butterball ran out to see who it was. He came back as fast as his little legs could carry him. Mom, oh, mercy me, it's the hag again. What are we to do? Butterball, said his mother in a stern voice, you know perfectly well what to do. Crawl under my baking table and stay there. Whatever happens, don't come out. And don't make a peep. Now will you promise to listen to me? All right, I'll do just as you say, said Butterball, and crawled under the table. Good day, said the troll's hag's head from beneath the armpit as she squeezed through the door. Is Butterball at home today? Indeed, he is not, said the mother. He's out in the woods hunting grouse with his father. That's too bad, said the hag, for I have such a pretty little silver spoon to give him. Pip, pip, here I am, said Butterball, and again he jumped out from underneath the table. My back is still so stiff, Butterball. You'll have to fetch the spoon for yourself. Butterball squatted and crept into the sack. No sooner was he inside than the troll hag grabbed the sack, flung it over her shoulders, and strode off. This time she didn't stop until she reached her house. There she called her daughter. Now, daughter, drooled the troll hag, you must cook stew out of this juicy Butterball while I'm away fetching your father. When we get back, we shall have a feast. After the troll hag left, the troll daughter wanted to cook Butterball, but she wasn't quite sure how to go about doing it, being neither very clever nor used to cooking. Butterball saw her confusion and said, I can help you. I know how to cook. I cook with my mom every day. Oh, good, said the troll daughter, her mouth already watering at the thought of stew. Butterball explained about pots and pans, fire and water, and finally the pot and the water were ready. Now you have to test the water to see if it is warm enough, said Butterball. Huh? How do I do that? The troll daughter was now so hungry for Butterball stew that slobber ran down her chin. Lift the pot lid and plunge your head into the water. How do I know if it is hot? Whined the troll daughter. If it burns a little, it's ready, said Butterball. Oh, I knew that, said the troll daughter. She leaned over the pot and was just about to stick her head into the water when Butterball bent his head down as if he were a billy goat, took a running start, and butted the troll daughter behind so hard that into the pot she tipped. Then he slammed on the lid and ran out of the house and into the forest, where he found the root and the rock and dragged them onto the ledge above the door. He scrambled up after them and waited quietly. In the distance he heard trees being knocked over and rocks being crushed. Soon both the troll and the hag stood in the doorway, their giant noses sniffing the air excitedly. Smells good. Butterball stew, they said. Smells good. Daughter stew, squeaked Butterball, but they paid no attention. They walked into the room. Looks good. Butterball stew, said the trolls. Looks good. Daughter stew, peeped Butterball from the ledge. Then the trolls took to wondering who was making that noise. They walked in the direction of the sound. When they got to the door, Butterball threw the root on top of the hag, and he threw the rock on top of the troll. They both smashed into thousands of little rocks, and Butterball was safe. Then Butterball went into the mountain, and taking as much gold and silver, diamonds and jewels as he could carry, he went home to his mother. From that time on, Butterball and his family lived in the greatest of comfort and safety to the end of their days. Snip, snap, snoota, here eventira doota. Snip, snap, snout, the tales told out. Alright, let's skip to the title story. So there's lots and lots of good stories. If you want to read them, be sure to check out this book for yourself. It's really, really wonderful. And I'm skipping all these little explanation things because I just want to get to the stories. Here we go. Some trolls don't carry their hearts in their bodies, but keep them carefully hidden. To defeat such a troll, you need all the help you can get, for it is too difficult to do alone. In this story, it takes the cooperation of a really smart princess, a brave prince, and some good helpers to find the troll's heart. The troll with no heart in his body. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 7 sons. The king loved his sons so much that when the time came for them to leave and look for brides, only the 6 eldest set off. The youngest prince remained at home, for the king could not endure to be separated from all his sons at once. The other 6 promised to find a bride for their youngest brother as well. They traveled far and wide until at last they came to a king who had 6 daughters, each more beautiful than the next. The brothers were so happy that they forgot all about their youngest brother and their promise. They were so much in love that they forgot their good sense and rode home using a shortcut over the mountains, past the castle of a mountain troll. As soon as the troll heard the bridal party, he fell into a fit of fury. "Who dares trespass on my land?" he roared, and pointed his huge fingers at them. Immediately the 6 princes with their 6 brides and the beautiful horses all turned to stone. It looked as though the troll had 6 stone statues in his courtyard. The old king went nearly mad with grief waiting for his sons. Hugging the youngest, he said, "If it weren't for you, I would have no reason to live." "Oh, father," said the youngest prince, "I too wish to go out into the world to seek my fortune. Who knows but that I may discover what has happened to my brothers as well." The king was reluctant, but at last he gave in. He fitted the prince out as best he could, but when he had only a skinny old nag of a horse and a sack of food to give his son. With these provisions, the prince rode off, waving to his old father. After several days of riding, he caught sight of a raven. This raven was so weak its wings dragged along the ground, and its feathers were dull and falling out. "Please give me some food to eat," rasped the raven. "I haven't had a morsel for weeks. If you help me now, I will help you in your utmost need." The prince looked at the raven. "I'm not so sure about the sort of help you can give me, but you are a sorry sight, and I don't mind sharing my food with you." As the raven ate, his wings grew sleek and strong. When he finished, he beat his wings, circled twice around the boy's head, and then flew off. Next day, the prince rode past a large salmon that flapped helplessly in the middle of the road. "Help me," gasped the salmon. "Please throw me into the river, and I'll help you someday when you need it." The prince shook his head a little and smiled. "I'd like to see what a salmon could do to help me, but you're surely not doing any good here in the middle of the road." He gently slipped the salmon into the river. The salmon swam up to the surface, gave a toss with his tail, and disappeared under the waves. The prince rode on. The following day, a wolf stood in the road. This wolf was so starved, his ribs pierced through his skin, and you could hear the wind whistling through his stomach. His fur hung in bits around him, and he could scarcely keep his head above the ground. "Give me your horse to eat," begged the wolf. "I haven't had a meal for 2 years. If you help me now, I will help you in your utmost need." "No," said the prince. "That's too much. I gave my food to a starving raven. I helped the salmon back into the river, but if I give you my horse to eat, how am I to travel?" "Ride me. I will do whatever you ask, take you wherever you need to go. Just please let me have your horse." Well, the wolf begged so long and so hard that the prince felt sorry for him and finally agreed. While the wolf ate, his stomach filled in and his fur grew sleek and shiny. When he finished, he lifted his head and looked at the boy with glittering green eyes. "Take the bit and the saddle and put them on me. You'll not be sorry for your kindness." Then the prince did as he was told, mounted the wolf, and away they flew as though the wind itself was taking them. "Now tell me your errand," said the wolf. The prince told him about his brothers and his grieving father, and the wolf said, "Hang on, for I know just where to go." And they flew faster than the wind, and in no time arrived at the troll castle. "There stand your brothers and their brides," said the wolf, nodding at the statues. When the prince recognized his brothers, terror gripped his heart. "I might as well go home," said the prince. "How can I fight an enemy that can turn me into stone?" "Don't give up. The troll who lives here is out hunting for the day, so you are safe now. Go inside. There you will meet a princess whom the troll has stolen. She will tell you what to do." When the princess saw the prince entering the castle, she called out, "What are you doing here? It is sure to be your death. The troll who lives here is due to come back soon. I've come here to kill the troll and free my brothers who are standing out there turned to stone, and I will free you as well." "Don't you know," asked the princess, "nobody can kill this troll, for he does not carry his heart in his body." "Since I've come all this way, I might as well try my strength," insisted the prince. When the princess saw she could not make him leave, she said, "Well, since you will not leave, we must try to do the best we can. Creep under the bed over there and listen well to what he says when I speak with him, and be sure to lie there as quietly as you can." The prince crept under the bed, and soon the mountain troll came thundering home. As he filled the huge doorway, his nose shot up and sniffed the air. "I smell the smell of human blood," he roared. Yes, said the princess. "A magpie flew by this morning and dropped a human bone down the chimney. I threw it out and swept the castle, but the smell lingers." That calmed the troll, and he sat down for supper. As they sat there, the princess sighed and said, "There's one thing I want so very much to know, if only I dared ask." "Well, what can that be?" asked the troll. "I should so like to know where your heart is, since you don't carry it about you." "Oh, that is one thing you needed to know anything about," said the troll. "But since you've asked, I keep it under the stone slab in front of the door." "Aha, we shall soon see if we can't find that," thought the prince. Next morning, as soon as the troll had left for the woods, the prince and the princess began to look for the heart under the stone slab, but they could not find it. "He has made a fool of me this time," said the princess, "but I will try again." She went out into the fields and collected all the prettiest flowers she could find and strewed them over the stone slab, which they had put back in its right place. When the time came for the troll to return, the prince hid under the bed. Again the troll sniffed the air and complained about the human scent, but again the princess told him it was just the smell of a human bone dropped by a magpie. Then he noticed the flowers and wanted to know who had strewed them all over. "Why, that was me, of course," said the princess. "And why would you do a thing like that?" asked the troll. "Well, you know how fond I am of you," said the princess. "When I knew you kept your heart there, I just had to do it." "Oh, ho, ho," laughed the troll. "How could you believe I would keep my heart in a silly place like that?" "How could I not believe when you told me so yourself?" said the princess. "Where do you keep it, then?" "If you must know, it's over in the cupboard on the wall there," said the troll. "Aha," thought both the prince and princess. "We will soon find it." But the next morning exactly the same thing happened. No matter how many cupboards they searched, they could not find the heart. "We must try once more," said the princess, and this time she hung garlands of flowers all over the cupboards. When the evening came, the prince hid, and again the troll complained about the human smell. After the princess had calmed him, he noticed the garlands. "What's the meaning of all this foolery?" bellowed the troll. "Well, you know how fond I am of you. When you told me your heart is there, I couldn't help doing it." "How can you be so foolish and believe it?" asked the troll. "How can I not believe it when you told me so yourself?" responded the princess. "I should very much like to know where it really is." The troll could refuse her no longer and said, far, far away is a lake. On this lake stands a church. And in this church there is a well. Inside that well swims a duck. And inside that duck is an egg. Inside that egg you'll find my heart. But it will do you no good to know this, for you will never go there. We'll see about that, said the prince to himself under the bed. Early next morning the troll set out for the woods again. Well, I suppose I might as well set off too, said the prince. Then he blushed and looked at the princess. If I succeed and get rid of the troll, would you be my bride? He asked. The princess nodded and blushed too. Outside the wolf was waiting. Jump on my back. I will find the way, he said, when he heard what the troll had said. Away they went, over mountains and fields and valleys, until at last they came to the lake. The prince could not swim, but the wolf asked him not to be afraid. Then he plunged into the water with the prince on his back and swam to the island. They walked ashore, and there in the middle of the island stood a church, just as the troll had said. But the church door was locked, and the key hung high, high up on the steeple. The prince could see no way to climb up, but the wolf reminded him, "Now you must call the raven." And so he did. Immediately the raven came, circled the steeple 2 times, took the key in its beak, and handed it to the prince. In the center of the church was a large well, and in that well swam a duck. The prince called the duck until at last he lured her to him. Just as he caught the duck and lifted her out of the water, the duck let go of the egg and dropped it into the well. Again, the prince did not know what to do, but the wolf reminded him, "You must call the salmon." He did, and the salmon came swimming through an underground river and fetched the egg from the bottom of the well. "Go outside and squeeze the egg," said the wolf. As soon as the prince squeezed the egg, you could hear the troll roaring and screaming. "Squeeze it once again," said the wolf. This time the troll screamed even more piteously and begged for his life. He would do all the prince wished, he said, if only he wouldn't squeeze his heart to bits. "But tell him you will spare him only if he brings to life your 6 brothers, their brides, and their horses that he turned to stone," said the wolf. The prince shouted the instructions. When the troll had restored the brothers, their brides, and their horses, the wolf said, "Now squeeze the egg to pieces." The prince took the egg between his 2 hands, lifted it high above his head, and squeezed it flat. Then they heard a tremendous explosion, and the troll burst into thousands of pieces of rock. The prince rode back on his friend the wolf, and when they got to the troll's castle, his 6 brothers and their bride stood there alive. The prince went inside the castle, fetched his own bride, and together they all rode home to the old king in the royal palace. The king was so pleased and happy to see all his sons and their brides that he set about the wedding preparations at once. On the wedding day they had a grand feast. The king declared that never he had seen such lovely young people, but the loveliest of all were the youngest prince and his bride. They should sit at the head of the table, the king said, for without their cleverness none of them would be there. Snip. Oh, there's Rooster. Snip, snop, snoota, here eventyret uta. Snip, snap, snot, the tale's told out. I think Rooster's telling us that it's time for bed. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this video somewhat relaxing with all these adventures and mean trolls and what have you. Let's blow out our WoodWick candle. Let's listen to it real quick. The rooster in the back.